drinking tea today on the Good Girls podcast as we discuss Bridgerton.
Spiked tea still, though.
Obviously. I'm SJ here with my co-host Kay to discuss all things Good Girls, and this week, both the show and the book, in observance of the fact that
books and audiobooks have been consumed over the past week.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, we should watch the new season and catch up on this. And then Kay informs me that you had not read any of the books nor seen the show, which I feel like it's some of the most famous smut in all of the land right now. So I was very surprised and very happy for you that this has been the occasion that you needed to catch up on at least one book, couple seasons of the show.
I didn't even know that I was going into reproductive coercion when I started Bridgerton. And I was like, oh, wow, here it is. A real life case is something too infrequently displayed on live TV, which is a real thing that happens. Most often with the man, coercing the woman into reproduction. But sometimes you have Daphne.
Just trying to get a sample of her man's.
Oh, wow, that's happened. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. After I read the Breeder Kink book for the holidays, now I guess I'm just finding it everywhere.
There might have been more consent of the breeding in the shady Breeder Kink dark romance than there was in Bridgerton.
They had an explicit yet poorly written contract in that book, whereas Daphne was being under the table. But then again, so was he. So just a lot of intrigue in that first season. I just went back and also was watching the first season when you were saying that you were experiencing it all for the first time, because I was like, oh, I got to go back and watch it with fresh eyes. And yeah, there's some weird dynamics there.
Yeah, when the scene happened, I was like, really? Did that just happen? Did she just
sperm-jack him?
Come inside him when he was not able to make decisions for himself?
She sperm-jacked him
against his will when he directly said that? And is she not even the one who is being expected to apologize or have any sort of arc in this? This just happened.
Yeah.
Anyways, did I enjoy the book? I thought that it was a pleasant read. I thought that it did the same for me as an average romantasy book, which is that it put me in an entirely different world that felt very separate from my own, but there was still a cute enough romance and enough tension. Never anything actually bad. Like at one point, he's like, oh, I was going to go to the United States, but then it turns out that we're at war with them right now. And I was like, okay, that's a really light way to touch on the War of 1812. And that was it.
She did some research. She wanted to pop it in there. So you read the first book, The Duke and I.
I read The Duke and I read The Viscount Who Loved Me.
Viscount.
No,
that's okay. That's another.
Never good at pronunciation. And then I realized that I had to be able to do things. And so I did the audiobook of Benedict's story with the Cinderella story of the current season happening. The audiobook, highly do not recommend because they have the old British woman voice that narrates the show at times.
Julie Andrews? That's Julie Andrews.
It's a Julie Andrews. They have either her or a voice like her do the entire book, and I thought that
narrating
I was
the sex scenes.
I thought that I was gonna get a sexy male British accent and power and all that, and then instead it's an old British woman reading the men's dialogue, and I was like, this might be worse than modern day young American woman doing a man's voice. So it was.
Oh no! Although if that actually is Julie Andrews that is doing it, props to them. But now we'll have to go investigate this.
I paid $5 for that audiobook, and as soon as it started, I was like, I guess I should have downloaded a sample first. But how was I to know that
Maria from The Sound of Music would actually be the Queen of Genovia would be reading this? So, and then in the show, you got through 1 or 2 seasons in the show.
1 season, and I just started The Viscount Who Loved Me. How dare I mispronounce?
So do you know who Lady Whistledown is yet?
I did know because they show her going off and using her rough Irish accent as if, the actress who plays I believe is
Nicola
is Irish.
Coughlin, I think, yeah.
So I think that's the voice that she's using when she's pretending to be more of a commoner when she's getting it.
Sleuthing. Okay, because I was like, I don't know how far we should go in this episode if you don't want any spoilers about that. Because finding out who Gossip Girl is really kind of the big reveal. And I think that you don't find out until her main season in the show
to see
and
that
the
her
book.
Season was season 3, though.
Yeah, they did swap them
and
around.
I was like, why wouldn't you wait until a later on one? Though my guess is because they people like Nicola, so they were fine with it.
Yeah, I think so, and they said they were talking to the showrunners, I did read that one, and they were like, because in the book, he just hangs around making her wait for him till he realizes that he's loved her all along in the books, and they said in the show, they felt like it wasn't believable because her character is so beloved, that it didn't seem believable to have her just hanging around pining after him for one more season, and it felt more believable to have Benedict go fucking around for one more season, which he's great at.
Colin. They
I
swapped
they
the
swapped the
order. Okay. Oh,
order.
yes. Okay.
Okay, so they
Yeah.
moved Benedict and Sophie to the 4th season of the show because it's more believable that Benedict would have been fucking around, especially because they made him more of a fuckboy in the show.
Yeah, it's like an
And he's
artist
just like
fuckboy.
yeah, he's just at his little, like, artist parties having orgies, which I don't think was as much of a thing in the book. He's definitely not bisexual in the books, but I think that he is more slutty in the show, which, I mean, like, the show is just a little bit more slutty in general, so I think that made
Yeah,
it
in
believable.
the books, he was more so just not really interested in any woman in particular until he met Sophie.
Yeah.
And also something in the books is that Penelope, like, loses weight before she gets her because it was in the
Yeah.
book with Benedict that all of a sudden she was much
She gets
slimmer.
hot, i.e., loses 2 stone or
2
something, which is
stone.
like 40 isn't a stone like 20 pounds?
Quite a bit of weight, I believe. I was like, "Is that correct? Because that's not baby weight. That's like, putting Penelope on Ozempic.
Yeah, that's 28 pounds. She loses 28 pounds. Yeah,
Significant, not baby weight."
and I don't really appreciate that. I think that the show handles it much better, that she is hot
Nicola
through
is
the whole
hot.
thing
Yeah.
and she stays the same weight, and it's more that he's being an idiot than that all of a sudden I actually did was like, "Oh, I'll go back and read one of the books that I haven't read yet," because I had read the first 2, and of course, Benedict is not available from the library right now because everyone's reading it, so I was like, "Oh, I'll read the Colin and Penelope one," and she has a bad complexion in the beginning, and then also she figures out her skincare routine, which that was probably all of us, but I don't appreciate the fact that she had to actually get
The weight loss
skinnier.
was
Yeah,
unnecessary.
in order for her to, like, be hot, and the books focus more on the fact that she gets to start picking out her own clothes so she doesn't have to wear the terrible clothes that her mom picks out for her. That's a much better storyline. Thank you, Shonda.
Yeah, we probably need to bring back the word rake. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed rake.
I know, especially at one point in one of them, I think Daphne uses it as a verb in the show to her brother. She's like, "Well, while you're busy raking all over London." And I'm like, "Yes, I love it." We
Such a sexy term to say that a man's a male hoe, like, it's so much
Yeah,
better.
it's like a man word for slut, but at the same time, it is also, like, kind of positive in the way that I also mean the word slutty, so I feel like it's like you're just, like, having a nice time, like, being kinda
Yeah,
slutty.
I want, like, a nice hookup with somebody who's rakish back in my 20s, don't worry. Don't
Well,
worry,
so
Mr.
into your own life, Kay, as one of 6, which isn't quite as much as the Bridgerton 8.
7.
Oh, see?
6 siblings, 1 of 7.
Oh, yeah, okay, see, I didn't even have that right. This is people lose track of these things. Okay, so but you're number 4, right?
Yes.
So in a Bridgerton-like household, you would have been letter D, like Daphne,
I'm
having a
basically Daphne, who one reviewer described as too stupid to live. Yes, TL. Mainly because she didn't realize the cum needs to go inside her.
I do wanna talk so much about that, but I do wanna ask first, have you ever thought about what your name would be if your parents were naming your siblings in alphabetical order of birth?
Oh, well, I would hope it would be Delilah, but I don't know if I'm, like, as like, a delicate enough person to have the name Delilah.
I think that would be
"Hey
great.
there, Delilah, what's it like in New York City?"
And did you have any particular affinity for the book as an almost Bridgerton-sized family?
That's
How
what
do
I
you think
liked
that
about
Julia
it.
Quinn did? I think that is one of the things that
That's
I
the star of the book.
yeah, to me, that is the star of the books and the show is just, like, the fun family dynamics because I feel like the romance writing I've read better, but I think what is, like, particularly endearing about this and makes the format for just a great series is the large family dynamic.
I thought the family was great, and I overall liked the main characters in the 3 books that I did read. I think that an issue across it is more just that the sources of tension are so stupid.
Yes!
Like, "Oh, Simon just doesn't want to love ever as a way to get back at his dad,"
And
and
it's like,
then
your dad's dead. I mean, go back to the theme for books being men need therapy. Like, nah, I've already been there. That's
yeah,
not a fun departure from reality.
like, the dad isn't gonna know whether or not you have an heir. He's gone, and then Antony's basically the same thing where he's like, "I can't love because I might die at age 39." Okay, also a
It
stupid
does
friendship.
set up a really good plot device of him sucking bee venom out of, Kate's titties when some, like, well-intentioned little ladies stroll by in the garden, which is like, "Holy moly, Julia Quinn." That was a stretch to come up with that, but,
You got there. Yeah, when I realized that that was what was happening, I was like, "Couldn't they just have made out?" Like, they already had hookup scenes.
yeah.
Like, why the beast? I don't know. But, and then with Benedict, I guess it made a little bit more sense because there was a class difference that he oh, you haven't gotten to Benedict's book.
I've watched this season, though.
Or yeah, I thought the class difference was maybe more or better reason than, like, I just can't love anybody.
I do think because when I read Antony's book, I was like, "Holy crap, Julia Quinn's already out of ideas. This one's rough." And I read them both at the same time and when the second season of the show was coming out, I think. And then I thought that also the season of the show, you can tell me after you've watched it, is also the worst season of the show. Like the characters in the book and in the show don't really have a lot of chemistry. And in fact, pulled back up, I do a book report for my book club every year at our Christmas party. We do a book report on our worst read of the year. My worst read of 2023 was The Viscount Who Loved Me, which
You just don't read enough shit.
I will say since starting the Good Girls podcast, my bar
Be
has
more
gotten way
competition.
lower. But let's just start with the title, because like, is that a James Bond reference? And who was the editor that greenlighted this, or probably like suggested it to Julia Quinn? Like she had written this delightful little book, and then they were like, "Let's make a James Bond joke in the title." I didn't really get it.
You can't think too hard about any of the Julia Quinn books. Remember, the war just was happening. That is our one sentence.
So I looked back at my PowerPoint presentation that I put together on this, and I had written that it was an American sixth grader's imitation of Jane Austen, which I pulled the quote from best-selling author Jill Barnett, who called Julia Quinn truly our contemporary Jane Austen. And I was like, that doesn't
Oh, let's not go there.
yeah, I feel like a lot of the things that is like what you love about Jane Austen is kind of missing in the books, but especially the second one. Like they talk a lot about witty banter, and I feel like in the book they keep referencing that they're like, "Oh, we have all this witty banter," but I'm like, I would just say that they have lack of chemistry, and that they seem like they're being mean to each other. So, like, here's a quote from the book. "I don't enjoy being condescended to," Kate said stiffly. His eyes flashed. "And I don't like being denied my rights." Should I be reading this in a Julie Andrews voice? I'm gonna do female reader doing male voice. Okay. "I don't like being denied my rights," he returned, his voice cold and his face a harsh rendition of aristocratic power. This was because she had asked him to wait a week to have sex after getting married. "Tell me," he whispered, his lips pressing against her ear. "Tell me how to make it right, for I don't think I can grant you your reprieve." He molded his body against hers, his strong arms holding her close as he groaned. "I can't wait a week, Kate. I simply cannot do it." I'm like, this is more just like trigger warnings about marital rape.
So I think that what Julia Quinn was trying to do there was that Kate did not see herself as desirable or think that Antony actually wanted her, even though they have numerous scenes before that that show that Antony wants her and is sexually interested in her. I
Yeah.
think that like she still was trying to show like, oh look, Kate's not expecting how much Antony wants her.
Yeah,
I don't
which is
know.
always a tricky
Yeah.
thing to convey. And anyway, I mean, I do think that the show does slightly better with that. I mean, honestly, too, with like Jonathan Bailey can like add a little
But why did they,
pizzazz.
like, slim down his sideburns between season 1 and season 2? I didn't like that
Oh,
decision.
yeah, that's a good point.
Very full sideburns
They
in season 1, and then season 2 started, and I was like, "Why didn't they make him less sexy for, like, his season?"
So I feel like in general, as the show goes on, they are trying going back, jumping from watching season 4 to watching season 1, I did realize that there's been a slow deviation from in season 1, they are generally trying to have an authentic Regency look that's just a little Shondified. And by the time you get to season 4, they are in their own Shonda universe that departed from Regency England in the multiverse somewhere like 200 years ago. And it is just its own thing, and I feel like he just becomes more and more like a
Take
modern
away a
adaptation.
ton of different things, but do not take away the sideburns.
I know, I agree. He gets less hot in season 2, and I don't really see a lot of chemistry between him and the, actress who plays Kate. It's just, like, fine, but in general, I do feel like the show version does do a better version, and just with that whole, like, is it actually supposed to be historical romance, or is it just this cheeky modern rendition of Jane Austen things? In the book, it does just give this impression like it's a poorly researched historical fiction, but she's trying to do it and she's just not pulling it off. Whereas in the show, it's obvious that they're not trying to be historically accurate. They're just having their own little fun time that I am just like
They bring
along
in
for
the
the ride.
queen. They bring in the queen in the show, and the queen is not a part of the original
Yeah,
books.
which would also be, like, terribly historically inaccurate, how much the queen is just, like, up in everybody's business. I recognize that in this point in history, like, you're more of a head of state than a head of government, but there seems like there should at least be affairs of state that you should be attending to instead of having petty little arguments with your ladies-in-waiting about gossip columns.
Perhaps.
But all of it
To
that is
be
to say,
debated.
all of it makes the show fun, and so for the most part, I'm just, like, along for the ride with all of their deviations from history because they're just, like, obviously not trying, the music that they're listening to is a string quartet version of Ariana Grande songs, like,
It's
it's all good.
beautiful. Music's
I I
definitely a highlight.
I love the music. I sometimes have started listening to Vitamin C string quartet versions of pop music when I'm doing work now because I'm like, "Oh,
Very nice.
this is
Yeah.
a nice genre."
So the sex scenes in the book remind me of like what I would think is hot sex when I was in high school and a virgin.
Yeah.
There is no foreplay or very limited foreplay. In the Duke and I briefly sticks his finger in her beforehand, but more just to like
Just to
check
do a
it out.
cervical exam, make sure her hymen is
Yes.
still intact.
It was, like, not described as, like, anyway and then, like, all in almost all the sex scenes, the woman comes just from penetrative sex. There's no mention of, like, any other friction.
Which we know in real life only occurs about for 20% of women, is that right?
Yeah, and Julia Quinn, you know better. And then also a lot of, like, virgin losing scenes, they describe
Well,
the
same.
penis entering in as an odd feeling to start with. Like, every single one uses ODD, odd. And I'm like, I don't know, like, can we at least get a different word than odd for Kate?
Yeah, that is
And I don't know if like, the word odd is what comes to mind when a penis enters you.
Or again, like, let's decide if we're trying to be accurate or sexy with these books. And because I feel like there's a lot of ones, I read a lot of romance books that involves a virgin for the first time. And, they're just like having this sex scene where it's all of a sudden like she's having a great time. Everyone's competent. They know what they're doing. Everyone comes simultaneously, blah, blah,
I
blah.
think it's fine that it doesn't feel great for the first time, but I don't know about the word odd.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, if we're gonna have a fanciful departure from reality anyway, like, could we not just have, like, very fun sex scenes? Because then again, I was just rewatching, season 1, so there's Daphne and the Duke, and this is more the kind of thing that I'm like, if we're just being silly and having a sexy TV show, then, like, let's have an artfully directed intimacy scene where, like, everyone has a nice orgasm, and I don't have to think about words like
Well, the
odd.
TV show, especially season 1, was I think it was obviously done well. People
Yeah.
responded to it, but that is because the Duke, Simon,
Ugh.
was, like, the hottest that they could
Reggae
have possibly gotten.
John Page, yes,
Oh,
and
he's
I
a
think a
baddie.
huge blow to the show that after season 1, he was like, "I'm better than this show," and he has not been back since, and then it makes for kind of a weird dynamic. I mean, I guess in their case, it actually makes more sense that, like, Daphne married into another dukedom, and so she has to go, like, administer that house, that in reality, she probably would have been, like, off doing her own thing. The thing that has confused me about season 4 of the show, this is probably due to just limitations on budgets for their sets, is that as far as I can tell, everyone still lives at home, and, like, now some of the kids are married off. I did realize in the books, once Antony gets married off, his mom goes
Moves out,
yeah, and,
like,
like,
he
buys
moves
another
into
house, and
Bridgerton's
he
house.
keeps the family home, or at least, like, once he has a kid, she leaves. Um, and then Penelope is married to Colin at this point, but she's just like at her mom's house all the time. Like she and Colin don't appear to have gotten their own place. Like you just see them over either at Bridgerton House.
In the books, it was weirdly in like the epilogue of The Duke and I that Penelope and Colin were married. Like it was
Mhm.
like 10 years later and it shared that they were married. And it did say that to economize, they stayed in the Bridgerton house when they would come visit, or the Duke's house.
I mean, I'm guessing that this would be a much bigger house than, like, you and your siblings' spouses all, like, just deciding to live in your parents' house still.
Isn't that like essentially what like Kate and William do? Don't they live in like a wing of Buckingham Palace?
I guess so, but they also have, like, their own residences at various places. I mean, the other thing that they're not really showing you in the show is how people at that time had their country estates, and, I mean, we do see
I
the
wouldn't mind
cottage,
more.
though.
Yeah.
So in season 4, when he is on his way back with Sophie from where he rescues her, they stop at his cottage, and I was having very shades of heated rivalry because he's like, "Oh, I just have this little cottage that we can stop off at for the night to get out of the rain." And I'm like, "Why does everybody have these cottages that are, like, bigger than my actual house,
It
and
was
how
a
do I
nice
get one?"
cottage. Yeah.
It was not a
In the
cottage.
book, it definitely
N
had like many rooms that would indicate that it was more
It
like
was very Shane
a cottage.
Hollander's college a cottage. It was something that I would not use the word cottage to describe, but I loved it, and I wanted to live there.
Hmm.
Oh, but while we're on the topic of Benedict's cottage, I'm willing to believe that we are just like in a universe that has some different laws of nature. Although it was very inexplicable, he and Sophie are flying a kite together and they're just there in a field with no air movement around them and the kite's just hanging there in the air. Whatever.
Not
I
in the books.
then I saw this other thing where they're like, "Oh, the kite scene was added because this is perfect plot device to show her imagining freedom and him blah blah blah." Okay. You could have put a wind machine in that scene, but fine. It is the medical stuff in this show that is just making me
The bee sting.
die laughing. Oh, I'm just saying, so he is rescuing Sophie and gets stabbed. So that's why they have to stop off at the cottage because they get caught in the rain. And then when they stop, she's like, "Oh my gosh, you've been so terribly injured." And he's like, "Oh no, it's only a flesh wound. I'm just going to go lay down." And then in the middle of the night, he is like septic or something. He's so badly infected in this wound that's so messed up that he's like,
Did he get antibiotics?
they didn't have antibiotics. So then he's
So
just
he's
like,
dead.
I know. So he's just like he's so in turmoil from this that he's in a stupor, just like screaming out in his sleep. So she comes running in there and is like, "Oh my gosh, this wound looks really bad." So she sticks a bandage on it and applies pressure, and then like immediately he regains consciousness and he's like, "Ah." And yeah, there's no antibiotics. It's not even like, okay, maybe like throughout the course of the night after she cleans the wound, she just sticks like some pressure and a bandage on it. And then he's like recovering, hanging around the cottage for a while.
Maybe
And
he's
then
part romantasy and she's actually a witch.
I would appreciate some kind of plot detail explaining what type of witchcraft power she has because she cleans his wound so well that I guess a few days later, time is very unimportant in these shows. He decides to take a little dip in the pond on his cottage property with an open wound. He's going to get like 9 different kinds of blood infections. Anyway, so
That
there's
is a
that.
Shondaland decision. In the book, he gets the flu. It seems more like the flu or a bad
Oh,
cold. No.
yeah, I guess they were, like, trying to make it dramatic, but then I'm like, you have to also make up some silly plot devices to explain how she's able to suddenly heal him just by her
Yeah,
presence
an
and ward
infected
off
open
the
wound.
germ-infested pond waters.
Ugh.
My other one as a, former haver of babies is that when Francesca thinks that she's pregnant because she's missed her period by a few days, so we're assuming at this point that she's probably 5 weeks pregnant, maybe 6. And they're like, "Well, you have to have an exam so we know if you're pregnant so we can decide how to proceed."
What
So
exam?
they give her a pelvic exam at 6 weeks pregnant, and they're like, "Nah, she's not pregnant." And I'm like, "You can't
Don't make that
tell?
up.
Well, yeah, don't make that up. Like, just let her wait for a little bit or something." Like, I was like, "Why do they have to make this a plot device when we all know that you can't even take a pregnancy test half the time," and they didn't have pregnancy tests. So, I was just I don't know why that, like, other things, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that totally seems normal that they would have, like, acrylic nails. And that's just like part of their whole aesthetic. But then when they're getting like fake medical procedures with no explanation, I'm like, no, you have gone too far, showrunners.
It's just like it's not necessary either. Like, it doesn't help anything. They could just decide whether or not she was pregnant and say some other way besides not showing, like, a pelvic exam. That's
Yeah.
right.
Although I don't know if you've gotten that far in the book because I think that there might be actually a pregnancy loss. I think in the book it happens that she is pregnant and then loses the baby. And so I think that they said that they in the show they were trying to keep it a little bit more lighthearted, which this wasn't exactly lighthearted because she had like a non-consensual pelvic exam performed by a male physician. She was pressured into it. So I don't know that they achieved their goal of keeping it lighthearted, but I guess they're trying to keep some of the like more intense triggers out. A person who works in public health did point out that like one of the biggest historical inaccuracies in the show is the likelihood that Violet Bridgerton would have had 8 consecutive healthy pregnancies
They
and
all
not
had a
lost a
lot of
single
kids and none of
kid.
them die.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only person who died in childbirth is Simon's mom from, like,
Yeah.
what I've read so far.
Yeah, exactly. While we're on the topic of just things
Baby
that
making?
on the topic of baby making on a little bit more cheerful subject. So, I had some questions about the lack of sexual knowledge by pretty much every girl. It's
Very extreme lack of
like at
sexual
first you're like,
knowledge.
oh, maybe it's just that like Violet is particularly prudish and doesn't tell Daphne because that's a big plot device, of course, in season one. But then it's like every young female character for the most part, including like Eloise, who's very well read, and you would
And
think would
Sophie,
seek this
who,
stuff
like,
out.
spent time with the servants, like, so
Yeah.
she theoretically would have a better idea than anybody, she was also clueless.
Yeah. So I referenced an excellent article that was by Alexandra Vosti, who's a author and professor of literature. It's called Ne'er Duke Well, and it's the story of a Regency era who runs a circulating library with a secret catalog of books for ladies, including racy memoirs, erotic poetry, early feminist tracts, and works explicitly designed for sexual education.
Oh, I love that.
So that sounds like a much more delightful book. And so, yeah, she says that we can infer from a variety of texts that the total lack of knowledge, and here she's referencing in season 3 when Philippa is like she's married and she like clearly does not understand that he has to like it in her in order to make the baby. Um, she's like, yeah, that is unlikely. And if you look at like Jane Austen's novels, they clearly assume a certain level of sexual knowledge amongst their readers. So they talk about like people having a life of sin, like this guy having fathered somebody out of wedlock. Like there's just a lot of
Yeah,
things that
you would pick up on how the baby was born out of wedlock by your age 20.
well, and, like, they were sheltered, but they were still out in the country, like, around farm animals, because that kinda happens in season 1 where they're like, "Oh, how did Marina get pregnant?" And the brothers are like, "Have you ever been around a farm animal?" And it's like, they would have been sheltered, but still had access. Alexandra Vossi points out that there were a lot of erotic novels at the time that they would have potentially had access to, and that, there were actually sexual education texts that did exist. We don't know to what extent, of course, like conversations that happen behind closed doors, but it does seem like that's kind of a primary job of a mother is to prepare her daughter for her role in marriage. So even if the mom's not describing a Cosmo technique for how to give the best blowjob to please your man,
Oh my gosh, but she should.
she should, but they would have at
Put
least
some
had to,
ice
like,
in that.
explain the basic mechanics of, like, you gotta get the dick in there in order for this to work because the whole purpose of these noble marriages was to create babies. So it seems like that is a big gap, and they, like, overuse that as a plot point. But I think that's especially questionable with Eloise given how much she's, like, a feminist who would have, like, tried to go seek these types of books out, that the Bridgerton girls have brothers, and the one that I think is most confusing is Penelope, now that I'm going back and watching season 1, because if you hear Lady Whistledown, she's all like, "Oh, well, you know how these people are." She's like, "Obviously, he's a real scoundrel. We know what that person's up to." So she's, like, talking about all of these, intrigues and things, and yet she is so not knowledgeable that when her cousin gets pregnant, she's like, "How'd that baby get in there? Tell me more." And she's like, "It was
There's no way.
love."
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that there's too stark of a contrast between how worldly Lady Whistledown seems to be in her columns, and then the reality that she starts out at least as this like 17-year-old girl who doesn't even know where babies come from. And I'm like, you have to explain that a little bit, and it would make more sense if she had been in situations where she has some access to like racy novels and things like that.
Daphne with Simon coming next to her for, like, over a week and her never being like, "Oh, what's going in next to me? What is
I know. Well,
that?"
and they don't really explain. I was just rewatching that scene, like their first one where they're together in the hotel bed. I mean, there's only like one bed in there. It's not like he sends her
Who's
back off to
cleaning the
her room
sheet?
after this. Like, yeah, who's cleaning the sheets? What is the pool of jizz that he's leaving behind? Like, unless he has a little like bowl next to him that he's like,
Oh,
into the
in the
bowl.
books, it's definitely, like, it's just in the sheets in one half of the bed, and he, like, rolls her over to his side.
And then he just, what does he do? Does he sleep on the
The
jizz
servants just,
pool? Or
like, come and clean it every day. What
does
a
he,
service.
like, at least have a little towel next to him or is he just, like, laying on top of this sticky jizz pool while it dries on him all night? And she's like, "Oh, what's that?" He's like, "Don't worry about it."
Like, come on, Julia Quinn.
Anyway, and if you want more good content on sexy stuff in the Regency era, I came across Dr. Esme Louise James, who is the author of Kinky History, and she does delightful social media videos where she'll tackle all these different questions of like, how would this have worked? Like the Regency era was actually pretty racy times. From the history, seems like it was a little racier than even how it's portrayed in the show and books. So for example, I watched a great video that was, the logistics of Colin finger blasting Penelope in the carriage and how that would have worked and what was it possible, which was just like a delightful little exposé. Apparently, in that case, it's not whether or not you would have been able to finger blast her, it is that it would have tipped the carriage over because they were famously unstable carriages because they were very tall for their width, and so they
Maybe it
probably
was a
would have
very gentle fingers.
killed everyone. Nah, I don't know, you gotta watch the scene and tell me if you think it was gentle, okay? Okay, so finally, I wanted to do a little peek ahead to season 5, and have you heard about the drama with the setup for Francesca's love story?
I have not. Are they going to be lesbians?
Yes. So we already have the setup in the book, which is that she marries John Kilmartin, and they have a very happy marriage. He dies suddenly. In the show, it's due to a headache, but he dies suddenly and tragically. And so she's mourning him for a while. And then in the books, she moves forward with his cousin Michael. In the show, they have recast that as a woman named Michaela. And so as soon as that became clear that that is where that was going, the internet became totally split about this, with some people being like, heck yeah, and some people being like, I'm not homophobic, but this really bothers me.
So I was seeing about how, like, with Harry Potter, they've made Snape black. And the feedback that I do hear is that Snape being black adds a racist component to
Mm,
both James and Harry having this big bias against
yeah.
Snape where they don't like him. And maybe that's okay because it farther leans into this idea of, well, are we just totally unfairly holding this judgment against Snape that he's a bad guy? And
Yeah, just because he had greasy hair and was kind of awkward and now apparently is black.
yeah, I don't know.
That's fair. Well, as I am currently boycotting all things J.K. Rowling due to her transphobia, then I am stuck with Julia Quinn's work here. Which I will say also, interestingly, Julia Quinn was consulted in all of this and she wholeheartedly signed off on it and said that she really liked the change. I do think that there is a transition here where not only was John a white man in the books, he's a black woman because, or not John, sorry, Michael. And Michaela she's a black woman and John Kilmartin is black. The only thing that confused me about that is not the race bit. It's that he's supposed to be Scottish. So like at his wake, that Michaela, the cousin, is like, oh, well, I think that he would have liked to have a lively Scottish wake. And so like, let's go do this wake after the funeral. And I'll teach you some like Scottish Highlander dances that John and I used to do as children. And I'm like, okay, so they're still supposed to be Scottish, but then there's like they're not Scottish, which doesn't really have to be white. I'm just saying, like, she doesn't have a Scottish accent, and there's no reference whatsoever to him being Scottish. Like, from only having seen the show, I had no idea that he was Scottish until she was like, "Oh, let's do the Highland dances of our childhood." And I was like, "Shouldn't we have a Scottish accent, but you can be Black and Scottish, so that's not my problem. It is just the part about I'm like, they, like, changed some details, but not others, so then it left me feeling kind of confused, and I was like, "Okay, fine, whatever." I think it's so interesting because it does sound like a lot of the comments that people were making when the TV show version first came out, and they were so upset about the racially blind casting of characters basically in the show, and that they threw in any character of any race as, and changed the
Oh,
names
I
to fit
think it
with
makes
them.
it, like, 50 times cooler. I don't think that I would've watched Bridgerton if it just looked like it was going to be another
Like a
old
stuffy
Regency kind of thing.
BBC. Yeah,
I
totally,
mean, I'd watch it because it looked
and I
different.
think it, like, fits with the whole mood of the show being this, like, kind of imaginary fight of flight of fancy universe, and I think that the interesting thing there, I'm perfectly happy with the casting decision and with the production decision to make this fantasy universe, but in the case of having a queer romance in it, that's actually extremely historically accurate, and so I get that with the race thing, they do set it up a little bit, and they have rewritten it into their universe, and it's explained, but the thing about Francesca having a sapphic romance is like, do people not know that there have been gay people since before it was legal to be
Yeah,
gay?
they didn't just, like, magically exist starting
This
when
sounds
things
like all the
became
people, like, with, when we talked about Abraham Lincoln being gay or other kind of historical figures, and they're like, "No, that was just his best friend that he shared a bed with sometimes, and they were super close." Well, I did read some interesting background about this because I wanted to learn more about the history of queer romance in the Regency era, and so a lot of these were, interviews with authors who wrote queer Regency era romances, one was Olivia Atwater, who is the author of Long Shadow. And so she did a lot of research into this. And she said that actually an interesting thing is that women at that time were incredibly physically affectionate with one another. So it made it kind of hard to like out yourself as a lesbian and be like, no, I'm not just like holding your hand and sleeping in your bed with you like all women of the time. I like actually want to like be your lover. And so apparently they would like loudly talk about the poet Sappho at the like in that era to be like, "No, I'm an actual lesbian." So, like, other
Yeah.
lesbians
I'm
take
not just
notice.
sharing your bed and holding your hand and looking deeply into your eyes.
Yes,
I'm talking about
so
Sappho.
this is her quote from her fun fact article. It says, "Close female friends in the Regency regularly embraced, kissed each other on the lips, slept in the same bed, made exaggerated declarations of love to one another, and even expressed jealousy of each other's husband. Imagine how difficult it was to convince your friend that you were really, no, actually in love with her." And I was like, honestly, it just sounds like some peak girlhood, female friendship. Like, I feel like that's a lot of women now that, like, we have these very close friendships with our friends, especially because we're not worried about it, like, being construed as gay, and men are more limited because they have to be like, no homo, man. I didn't mean to touch your hand by accident.
Just love you a little bit.
So there's some other great historical accounts from the time. We actually have somebody's diaries, that's, like, the most famous lesbian of the time, Anne Lister, who wrote very detailed and graphic diaries, which is where we get a lot of our firsthand accounts from. And so it's very interesting, and I have a whole list of, some really great books. I read some interviews with other authors who wrote other books of the time, but a couple are, A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall, The Unlikely Pursuit of Mary Bennet by Linz McLeod?
Ooh,
I don't know.
that's
Yeah.
interesting.
So yeah, that's supposed to be like an actual sequel to Pride and Prejudice. So we have quite a list of other ones here, and so maybe we can post them in the show notes or post this link if you are interested in reading some of these other Regency era. Olivia Waite is another author. There's ones that are racially diverse sapphic romance as well about some Caribbean heiresses. And I did read one of these by Adriana Herrera. I think I
Is it
read An
nice?
Island Princess Starts a Scandal. It was good. Yeah, I liked the characters in it, especially because in that one, like the one love interest is significantly older than the other, and they don't try to make them both super femme. Like one of them is femme, and then her love interest is somebody who basically has enough power and money that she's, like, actually pretty much, like, living as a lesbian and dressing like a man. So it's more interesting than I feel like a lot of queer romance stuff gets straight washed for predominantly straight audiences. So that was a good one.
Interesting. So, as we wrap up our discussion of Bridgerton, a few things to touch on from last episode, Vagina Obscura. Mr. K wanted to clarify that he says vagina because it is such an ugly word that he tries to stay as far away from vagina as possible.
I don't think he's improving things with vagina, but
He also said that in German it sounds even worse. Vagina. Vagina. And he said that he heard it once and he was like, let's never say vagina again.
shaman lippin'. Yeah.
Yes, main takeaway. And then the other one was that I had missed when SJ mentioned that she was talking about Hippocrates.
No, Hippocrates.
Hippocrates. Always were. I had missed that she said Hippocrates, and I thought that she was talking about someone from about 80 years ago. But all the comments that I made that I would feel about somebody from 80 years ago still stood for somebody, way, way longer ago. So, way to go, men, with your consistency and not really understanding women. I really appreciate that about you.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Just
Chef's kiss.
yeah, this is
Oh,
across time.
this is harkening back to some other episodes, but because we've talked in the past about B.K. Borison being one of our favorite romance authors and also a Baltimore icon being in Baltimore, have you heard about the whole like Wawa hoagie thing with one of her books?
No, I have not.
I just thought this was worthy of a quick mention because of Baltimore Plus romance books and as a former Philly girl myself. So she has this quote in this book where it says, Jackson glances pointedly at the empty driveway. The ambulance is parked in the bay, its lights off. There's a guy leaning against the bumper eating a sub from Wawa. And so all these intrepid Philly fans were like, a sub from Wawa? No one who eats Wawa would ever call it a sub. It's a hoagie. Like, call it by its name. But I love the whole response from this because the whole romance community is just so whimsical. So she somehow catches mention of this, even though no one tagged her. And she's like, okay, so let me try to mention to you that my characters are like Baltimore-based people. So even though like Wawa and Philly people call it a hoagie, a Baltimore person would never call it a hoagie.
Would call it a sub.
Yes. So the happy ending to this story is that Wawa sent her a care package, and it says, we couldn't resist sending some love from the home of the hoagie, BK. Next sub is on us, quote unquote sub. Heart your friends at Wawa. And I was like, what a cute little story. I love Wawa's hoagies. I do call them hoagies since I am not native to Baltimore.
I feel fake when I call them hoagies. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? Jump on the bandwagon. No one outside of the Mid-Atlantic understands the distinction between like Philly dialect and Baltimore dialect. So you could totally call them hoagies.
I'm fair and square in it. Well, thank you for listening. More than I thought that I would consume Bridgerton, but now I'm in it. So I might even finish the season.
Yeah, we'll do a follow-up.
Have a good day. Thanks for listening.